he's very busy. So why don't we assume for the minute that he'll join us in a while. And so I know most people here, but why don't we start, just because I'm seeing your name on the top, Adrian, start with you and give us a little report on, if there is one, on what Baker's either working on or concerned with or talking about. I mean, I heard what you were concerned with and talking about a couple months ago.
Sure. Fairly quickly, Baker, I would say, is currently in a do-it-yourself mode. We've come to the conclusion that the city is not going to move on sidewalks, is not going to move on the homeless other than moving them around in our neighborhood, is not going to move on neighborhood services in general, like inspections that used to happen. And so we've taken the view that we are going to provide those services to our citizens ourselves. Where we've already started on, as a lot of other neighborhoods have, cleanups, which we're doing. They are exacerbated by the fact that we have quite a few informal camping operations in our neighborhood. And so we are also working on exploring how to make them, assuming that they're going to stay, how to make them sustainable within the neighborhood. Right now, there are no toilet facilities, there's no trash facilities, there's nothing. And this is not only making our neighborhood look like a dump, it's making it unsafe and unhealthy. And so we are currently, as a neighborhood, exploring ways to overcome the city's refusal to allow us to deploy, for example, porta potties, and the refusal of the city to provide any services to these individuals. Our view is that they are residents of Baker, and we, as other residents of Baker, need to incorporate them because they're not going away. And it's tough tracking. No one wants to do it. No one wants to pay for it. Yet everybody recognizes we've got to do something. Any comments that we have from the rest of the group, particularly success stories or additional pressure to apply on the city to change its paradigm of neighborhood services? We would love to hear.
So, okay, thank you, Adrian. Before we get to a discussion, because somebody else sent me something on the same topic, somebody who can't be here. Before we get to discussion, can we go around and get the pulse of other neighborhoods? That's really interesting, the do-it-yourself approach. So I'd love to discuss that. And we've been talking about having a bigger INC meeting on some of that, but it hasn't happened. So why don't we go, I don't know, I'm seeing David, I don't know how do you say your last name, Palet?
Palet.
Palet?
Uh-huh.
Hi there. In your college view?
Yes. So like Adrian, I'd like a little feedback at some point also on the topic I'm going to bring up. We have a developer who bought two pieces of property on Federal that are adjacent to each other. And then he also, so that's a mixed use piece of those two pieces of property. And then he also bought the property behind it, which is a residential SU neighborhood, SSU. And he's using the residential property to for stormwater and water retention for the MU property on Federal. And we see that as using residential for commercial purposes. He's also putting a driveway in so that he can abide by the fire code that fire trucks don't have to turn around. And so he's able to add roughly 20 or so apartments to the complex he's going to build on the federal property. Not only do we see that as a commercial use of residential property, the precedent it's going to set for Broadway or Pearl Street or any other street that has commercial property on it and it has residential behind it. So we went, I've been in discussion with the urban designer. She is resistant to any changes or even really fully answering my questions. And also we've gone to city council, to our councilman. And he was all on board about figuring out what was going on, but now he is not returning any of my communications about the topic. And has not answered what transpired between himself and the other people discussing this. There you go. Thank you. Christine, you're still muted.
Yes, that's pretty complex. Let me just see if I can reframe it and then we can go back to it. Is that the commercial property is on federal and behind it is a completely different SU zone district. Okay, and they're using that for detention on the commercial property and access to the all the way through. Okay, all right, that's going to be a lot to dig through. So, okay, boy, maybe we need 5 hours. I don't know. All right, well, thank you for that report.
Sorry to interrupt. Ian and I are close friends, so I've been texting with him, and he just sent you a text. He did just get into a small car accident, so that's why he's late.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if he's okay, but I'm sorry to interrupt. But I just wanted to share that that's why he's late.
Thank you. Well, Chris, since you're up, would you like to go next? You live in Swallow Hill, right? Is that?
I do,
your
but
area?
No, but I'm here for a reason with the business, so I'm happy to wait till you get through your delegates and then get to me.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Robert Schmidt.
Christine,
Yes.
quick question. The gentleman before who was talking about the federal property, what neighborhood group is he from again?
College View.
College View.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. I don't know. Mary Jane, would you like to go next?
Okay, Rudy and I have been working on something which has been very difficult. The applications that we've been receiving for liquor licenses, the ones coming from the city, have all the applicants' information redacted. So when I've contacted the city to find out why suddenly the applicant's information is redacted, they said, well, they've changed their policy. We can't get in touch with the applicants. That's private information. Okay, the first thing I did was talk to my mentor.
Let me just interrupt. So are you, just so I can clarify, are you saying there's nobody, you can't tell who the owner is to go chat with them?
They give the name, but the contact information is redacted. So when I get the name, I don't know how to contact the person. So when I contacted the city, they're like, if they want to contact you, they'll contact you. Now, they're not contacting us. Generally, when I get the application and I have the information, I contact the owner and I let them know the benefit of us having a good neighbor agreement. And we've had very good luck with them. We used to call the police constantly with the problems from the bars because we live on Broadway across the street from the bars. And the owners have said, please don't have the neighbors call the police, contact us. So with the good neighbor agreements, we have the contact information, we contact the owners. They've been very responsive. Now I don't have their contact information. We don't have the good neighbor agreements. the first person I contacted was Margie.
Hmm.
I don't want to go into too much, but Margie's really not in a position to help us now. But I asked Margie says she doesn't think this is coming from the mayor. She thinks they just did this on their own there.
Who's they? Who's they?
Probably Andrea decided this is what she wanted to do. She
Somebody-
decided we shouldn't get the contact information on our own.
Somebody at
I'm
E and
excise and
excise.
license.
Thank you.
Excuse me once again, what is your neighborhood group?
Cultural
I-
Art Residential Organization
Okay,
and a Golden Triangle.
thank you.
I contacted Loretta, and for a while I didn't hear anything, but after I contacted Christine, I contacted Larry. A friend of mine is friendly with Larry. She contacted Larry. Larry suggested contacting Christine. I mean, we've been trying everything we know to try to get someone to respond to this. Then Tripti contacted me, and Tripti said Brian from Excise and License told her an RNO can get this information. So I forwarded to Tripti the letter signed by me as president of my organization requesting the information and being told you are not entitled to this information.
Okay, so I get the lay of the land on this, and I know that Loretta did try to get a response. And I think that we're kind of stuck in limbo with excise and license. So maybe other people will have ideas on that, but I think this is a huge citywide issue if it really is true, because every neighborhood that I know of reaches out as soon as they hear there's going to be a new business. So they do it early.
And several
So-
people have told me they've been getting applications the same way. And I would assume the marijuana will come the same way.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that report.
Okay.
And if there are other neighborhoods working on that same issue, can you respond in the chat so we can get a group together if that's what happens? Okay.
I'll reach out and find out if it's happening up here in Brun and get back with you.
That would be great. Thank you, Robert. Robert, would you like to go next? And from Berkeley Registered United Neighborhoods, right?
Okay, I will do
Okay.
that. It's just been pretty normal for the last couple months. We've had several ADU rezonings within individual properties, and we actually have one application that is an entire block long, with the exception of 2 properties that want to change zonings to allow for ADUs. The only and then there is a large mixed-use project that's going on in the southeast corner of 46th and Zuni. That will be like about 100 units, but it'll probably be the largest mixed-use project along the Tennyson corridor. And we're kind of tracking that through its initial application process. And then we're working on finishing up the active centers and corridors design guidelines. And we've had a lot of cooperation from our district council people in some of the background information and graphics and things like that. And I'm hoping to be able to issue a draft on September 1 to our ZAP committee for review. And that's all I have.
So just let me ask, on the large mixed use project on Tennyson, is that pursuant to the new, I can't remember what it was called, that was passed last year for Tennyson? There were new guidelines and new zoning regs.
The I don't know, are you talking about the slot home?
No.
Changes?
Is it like north on 44th?
It's yes, it's north of 44th. It falls into an area that is now covered by a design overlay 8.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, that was passed like, I don't know, at the end of last year, I think, beginning of this year. And they are following the guidelines for that. At least that's what we've been told.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that.
Okay,
Um, let's see, David Pardo from Hooney, from Highlands. Is that Highlands?
Yeah, Highlands United Neighbors. I don't actually have much to report. I'm more here to
Okay.
hear about everything else from the city. Things, I mean, it's the Highlands, lots going on, but nothing of particular note or where we need like feedback or where something seems to be going wrong right now.
Nothing's come up in your RNO meetings. It's risen to the top. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, the biggest issue that we had was this idea of, are we getting, you know, are we losing our at-large seats? And
Okay.
that didn't end up passing this past Monday. So that sort of was our biggest thing, and that's not an issue anymore.
Okay. Thank you. Alan, good to see you.
Need to unmute.
Yep.
The neighborhood association that I don't represent, but I live in, is Stokes Place Green Bowers. Stokes Place Green Bowers is in an area that the city designates as the Belcaro neighborhood. Not true, technically. Our neighborhood has 165 homes. We are in an area which is comprised of the Polo Club and a number of gated communities, as well as Belcaro, which is across Exposition Avenue from the general neighborhood where I live, and Bonnie Bray. All of that area seems to be subsumed by the city as Belcaro, which brings up a very interesting prospect. Bill Tanner may recognize what I'm going to say, but Paul Cashman had made a suggestion that the city actually divide up officially into official neighborhoods to represent generalized areas of the city, geographical areas of the city, rather than individual neighborhoods, which may be members of these geographical groups. New York City does this, and very successfully. And the neighborhood, these neighborhood districts in New York City are able to communicate more forcefully with the city because they have official status. I think this is something that probably the group should really take a look at and perhaps advocate for. At least you should analyze it, the possibility that maybe there's a better way for representation, especially with a strong mayor form of government.
Sorry, that reminds me that
The other thing I should say is that my neighborhood association has declined to take any political points of view.
Okay. So thanks for that, Alan. We haven't reached out in a while, but having Cashman present what he's worked on in terms of the RNO ordinance, I kind of have lost track of what he's working, where he is on that, and we haven't had a presentation. So I think that might be a really good step to a discussion of that.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
But thanks for reminding us because it has sort of fallen off my radar this summer. So, okay. I'm just calling on people, but if somebody has to leave or wants to chime in, let me know. Bill Tanner, would you like to report?
Sure, just got to unmute here for a second. Let's see, I'm in Cherry Creek East, which is just south of the Cherry Creek North. We joke about, to give you a sense of the neighborhood, Cherry Creek North looks down their main street and what do they see? Neiman Marcus. And we look down our main street and what do we see is Macy's. So because of that, being our proximity to Cherry Creek North, just being across First Avenue, our land is cheaper than that in Cherry Creek North, and that's attracting a lot of attention from developers. So we're starting to see rapid interest in development. We have actually 4 concurrent projects going on in the neighborhood, 3 of which are new, and just about to go through the planning process and the city. And it just reminds me constantly to refer back to what Alan said of that RNOs are not, they really have no authority and very little power to achieve what they want in the neighborhood independently of the city. And it would be good to know what Cashman is thinking and where his proposal turned out. I remember vaguely hearing secondhand that the mayor didn't like it, and so it sort of died on the mayor's desk. But I'm not absolutely confident of that. It's a second-hand rumor to me. But it's obvious that there are a lot of problems in Denver, as people have mentioned. The sidewalks aren't being fixed. The homeless are just being shuffled around. There doesn't seem to be a strategy or plan for some of the biggest problems that the city has. So this year, our RNO will be encouraging people to vote. We won't be partisan, but we'll be encouraging people to get out and vote, because I view this as what happens when citizen involvement or engagement with the city begins to fall off. So there are, a lot of things that I'm just seeing about the city that, a lot of positive things. I do see a lot of effort to try to deal with things, but I see a lot more discussion than action. That's problematic. So I think it would be good to follow up on Alan's suggestion that Inc. get a hold of Cashman and we have some discussions about what's going on. I think it's also important to discuss what the purpose of Inc. is at some point in time. That's not a discussion I recollect recently. And what the RNO membership thinks Inc. should be doing and where it should be heading and how it can be most effectual with the city, and how Inc. avoids being a house divided. I mean, there'll always be different opinions, of course, and different thoughts about how to approach things, and that's good. But how can we make Inc. More effective relative to the city, since it's the one focused voice that has a real opportunity to make change here. Well, that's let me get off my soapbox. My apologies.
Well, thank you, Bill. And just on your last point, I agree with you on Cashman again, but on the last point, on the purpose of INC, I will say that you're opening up a can of worms. It's being discussed at the executive committee level, but we haven't had broad, from the ground up, really hearing from every RNO, not just the ones that are most vocal. We haven't had that. So I'm jotting that down as something that we need to get to.
One thing that one of my skills is I spent a lot of time in my life doing market research, including surveys. And I've noticed the city is finally using a lot of surveys. I don't know if it pays any attention to the results or does what I learned a lot of managers do is they get a survey from their constituents and then ignore it. But I think doing a survey of RNOs that was unbiased and made no attempt to bias anyone, but just made different suggestions as about what to do, beginning with maybe some focus groups or something, or discussion with different RNOs about what they think should go in the survey, might be a good idea to find out from the membership. Do they feel they're being adequately served by Inc? Do they feel they're adequately being served by their city? and where we're liking to focus.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on. I'm trying to, let's see. It's 11, so we're about halfway done and we have some more people to get through. How about,
Christine?
yes,
Bruce Basket with Hutchinson Hills.
yes, would you like to
I
go?
just had recent communications with Paul Cashman about both his R&O survey and ordinance and sidewalks. And he reported that he's still trying to make some headway with the mayor's office regarding supporting R&Os better than what's been done. And he said Dottie is refusing to schedule meetings with him regarding the sidewalk problems, especially after the auditor's scathing report about what they've done so far.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that update. By the way, do you have a report from Hutchinson Hills on what your R&O is, what's rising to the top or what you're working on?
I am iterating with Denver Public Schools the last couple of weeks, trying to see if we can get back into our neighborhood elementary school where we've been having meetings since the mid 80s. I was afraid for about 24 hours that they had so many requirements in place that we wouldn't be able to do that. But it looks like that's not going to be an issue at all. So we should be able to hold our first in-person meeting in the auditorium of our elementary school early next month. We will have to have everybody wearing masks, which I was pretty much expecting anyway.
Well, I am just curious while we're on that, if we could just have everybody go down to reactions on the bottom of this screen. Way down in the bottom line, go to reactions and you see the box that says raise hand. Can you all just raise your hand if you are having meetings in person now? See if there's anybody doing it yet. University Park. Okay, and Sun Valley. Okay, so that's 2. Okay, just curious, just nosy. Okay, so let's keep going. If you don't have anything to say, you don't have to report, but I see a couple more delegates. Rudy, I'm going to skip you because Mary Jane went. Katie Fisher.
Hi, Katie Fisher with University Neighbors. It's interesting to hear all of what you guys have been saying because we've run into little bits of everything everyone else has just said. We're still not scheduled to have, when I raised my hand for a neighborhood meeting, it has to be our annual meeting that's coming up in September. And that was our big argument is with our Zoom meetings, it's just 4 of us or 5 of us at best. And so we realize we haven't had a real annual meeting in like 2 years now. We claim we had one, but it was not really. So we're dying to see once again, are we ready to go back to the old ways of in person? We have problems on our committee even with people who refuse to get vaccinated. So we have the age-old argument, who wants to be in the room with someone? As you all suggested, we fortunately could meet in a old church meeting center. So that works for us. So we didn't have to go through Denver Public Schools. Once again, all saying, hey, yeah, we're going to have to mask up. Who knows how many will turn up. We've also gone back to announcing our meetings through flyers, the old fashioned way of door to door. We don't know how that's going to go. But it's one of those things of, do we go back to the old? Is it still time to be in Zoom? How effective has Zoom been? So many of our people just don't seem to want to work all day on Zoom and then you have to go to a meeting on Zoom. So we're like the rest of you, what's going on? As for zoning, we've run into the usual problems, like you said, with the bars and everything. People putting up patios because their businesses are failing. So immediately we find picnic tables out on the sidewalk and they didn't go through the city. And then the big arguments, they spent all that money. So, oh, let's let them have it. Once again, no neighborhood association, good neighbors meetings. We traditionally haven't done it because we're not organized as a neighborhood. We certainly have in our neighborhood always different opinions. We can't agree on anything. We can't even agree to agree about nothing. So we're struggling. And we also have the usual, just like Alan was saying, where we have a part of a neighborhood statistically who's with us, but they're their own association, but not really. And so when we say we represent people, there's always the argument, well, you didn't do north of Yale. And we're like, well, but now we stop saying that's in our neighborhood. And then back to Cashman. And in this case, it would be Black, Kendra, of who's representing these poor people. And we feel bad when we're not, but they don't want to be part of us. We've never considered them part of us, but it's once again, statistical neighborhoods, that whole mess. So I could just do a checklist of everything everyone has already sent in front of us. And I do know Cashman has been extremely busy with safety. So as you said, I'd love to hear what went through the neighborhood stuff and what we can do to strengthen us again. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see if we can speed it up just a tad. I see Eleni and Miles, are you in the same RNO? And if so, is one of you going to report?
I can report what's been happening in Congress Park. Eleni, you're a delegate, I guess, for a neighborhood?
Yeah.
So what's your RNO, Eleni? I thought you were lived in
South City Park.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so Eleni, you want to go quickly? Let's try to keep it under 5 because we have several more people.
I have a feeling Miles will probably talk about Teller Elementary because that impacts both. That's the neighborhood school for South City Park and Congress Park. So I'll let him give an update on that. But what I would just say, and then when I get the link, I'll send it out to you, Christine, is I attended a really amazing webinar last week. It was a national webinar on gentrification and displacement and housing policies, and everything that has gone wrong in Denver is going wrong in LA, is going wrong in San Francisco, is going wrong in New York, and yet they have even more protective policies in the form of rent control and other things, and they're still experiencing all of that. And building more housing is not working. We keep hearing market rate. That really what came down to this was a group of experts that teach at the collegiate level. Some of them are neighborhood tenant union folks. So it was a panel discussion and really talking about the failure of that policy, and that market rate really is so that corporations can buy all the housing, and that we should all be outraged that there's a huge transfer of wealth happening and it's going all the way up and that they don't really care. So just like they move the homeless people around, they're going to move all the renters around and all the low income people around. And it's this constant movement that is going to happen because the housing is going to become more and more scarce, even though there's an abundance of housing, right? There's just units sitting vacant because the idea is to buy them all up. And that is what's happening while we're all discussing other issues. That's happening. So you have to kind of follow the money, as you would say. So that's just what I'll say. When I get that link, I will send that out. It just hasn't been posted on YouTube. They recorded the Zoom meeting, but there's just a lot of good data in there and a lot of good discussion about gentrification and displacement and what does it really mean? How is it portrayed?
Okay.
You know,
Eleni, I think
that's my report.
I think that's really interesting. I read a ton of those articles and I haven't gone to that webinar. and I'm fascinated by this topic. And there's a lot of disagreement about whether market rate really helps and whether it trickles down. So I would love to have a forum on that. The problem is getting a forum requires us to locate a couple of speakers besides ourselves. I mean, I have plenty of opinions. You have plenty of opinions. I know
Right.
David Pardo has plenty of opinions. We need a couple of experts. You know, I was thinking maybe we get Chuck Marone and somebody, the guy he always quotes, who's, what's his name? There's a number of people, but it's going to be hard. So let's
Well,
think about it.
I'm more than happy to contact some of these folks, you know, that presented, because they presented both the neighborhood approach, you know, like,
Okay.
here's how it impacted us. And it just sort of tells us all the things we complain about, lack of engagement, you know, how once a neighborhood was not considered desirable, the city comes in and says it's desirable now, and we have to change the zoning and we have to change things now. And so, and how it affects local businesses when that happens. So I'm happy to make those contacts and
That would
see
be
if
great.
folks would come out and present, because I think that for me, it was a validation of a lot of what we hear at these meetings, and we feel like, what's happening and why isn't it getting better? And why are there more homeless? And what, you know, why do we keep doing the same thing over and over again and it's not working? Like, we're not accepting it, and the city isn't making those resources available for sidewalks, for infrastructure, for homeless, for any of that. And yet we keep saying we need more money, and we're like, okay, here's the money, let's do it.
Okay, and
And we're-
Eleni, I'm going to cut you off, but because we have more people, but I would like right now for anybody interested in helping to get together a presentation with speakers to put your name in the chat, and then we'll go from there. Okay, that would be really helpful. So thank you, Eleni. And Miles, did you want to add something from Congress
Yes.
Park? Okay.
Well, not on her part, but
Okay.
we've got all kinds of things going on right now. At least for us, we've got the BRT rolling forward. They've started some community meetings, but I don't want it to be like ECAP, where we kind of sat in the background and they just basically didn't discuss a lot of different items. So we're trying to set up some meetings to discuss outreach, specifically design implications, traffic. ECAP's got some future bicycle lanes on 14th. Which may remove some parking and again, increase density. So how is all this going to work with the BRT and the design they're working on? So they're kind of finishing up. We've been told they've decided on the station locations, and they're basically not going to change. But of course, they didn't ask anyone about those locations. And then there's going to be limited left turns, and traffic patterns are going to change. So there's just a lot of things neighbors just don't know about. And I'm thinking to ask them to actually go door to door, because we keep running into people saying, I've not heard anything about this. What is the city doing on bike paths and other things? And it's like, well, we've put the notifications on the website. And so getting people to find out about things has always been a challenge, and it seems like it's going to get worse. Then we've had some other major changes. So Art Mahy from Solid Waste is the new department head. They decided that they will not pick up trash in alleys anymore. And we've got a lot of houses with many steps in the front, and we have elders. And they said, now you got to bring your bins to the curb for efficiency. It's fewer trucks and it's for safety of the vehicles, is what they say.
Is that citywide?
No, just in our neighborhood. So it's been a challenge. They actually have staff that, if people call, will get assistance to have trash moved to the curb. But we were mentioning it at a meeting with them that it's summer now, winter's coming. There's going to be ice and snow. And then we also heard from another resident that in the past, they've been doing large item pickup in the alley. They're now saying, we've got to confirm this, they're saying it needs to be in the front now. So if you have a washing machine or something, you're now supposed to get that to the curb. And on the street I live on, it's heavily parked. So you're now supposed to put your trash out, your recycle out, and then now you're supposed to put large item pickups on the curb in the front. And I don't know how they'll pick them up if the street's parked up. So Art said he had made this decision, and again, he's new, but we're not hearing that they're even rethinking of not doing it that way. So it's causing lots of different issues. And then quickly, I'll go over Teller. The principal and residents had a meeting with Dottie about concerns about safety for the kids. And basically Dottie said, we've done a survey and no improvements need to be made. And the principal mentioned that this year they're having a new autistic program, and those kids' behavior is quite different. When they're afraid or something, they'll actually go somewhere and hide. And so now we've got these issues of, you've got more students going, and you've actually got kids being dropped off with buses, which is kind of new. A lot of parents live outside our families live outside the area. They're from different parts of the city. So they're trying to drop kids off. And then Dottie's saying, no improvements need to be made. But the parents are saying, we're seeing all these close accidents. And then now we've got trash, recycle, and large item pickup that's supposed to go to the curb, which now where the kids are going to be dropped off and picked up. And then and then so there's and then there's a bike path that's planned in front of the school as well. So the neighbors are like, this is just insane. And some of those pickups are during street sweeping as well. So it's kind of like how you guys are really just not thinking any of this out, and it's just going to cause a huge issue.
Okay, Miles, I kind of need to keep this moving because there's several more people.
Okay, just quickly.
Yeah.
Also, we had a Housing First project, and City Council really hasn't been helpful with the residents. We need to touch base, but they had concerns with safety, and we're calling the police and everything else. And then lately, we're having issues with some of the residents are afraid to go out in their front yards who live near Colfax. And I'm expecting with the new evictions, this is going to get worse. And so there's a lot of things happening all at the same time.
Okay, well, we're going to come back to that because that was what Adrian started with and you weren't on yet. All the things the city isn't handling, like the encampments. So we'll come back to that after we get through. We have a few more. I know that we have, I hope I got all, I don't know if I got all the delegates. I think I did. I know we have Chris Kiari is here as a guest. He wants to just talk about something. Oh, and Jean, Jean, do you have something to report as a delegate or?
Well, I don't have a lot to report except we're under a lot of development in Sun Valley. So there's quite a bit of attention on us. We're really in the process of trying to rebuild our resident component because unfortunately everybody was displaced that was in Denver Housing Authority's property. They were displaced and temporarily relocated while they have been going through the development process. But now they're starting to move back in because a couple of the major developments, there's going to be like 5 major complexes and 2 of them have been completed. So we're in the process of doing that, but we've had a strong R&O group of nonprofits and small businesses that are in the neighborhood, and they've kept things going, as well as residents that have stayed in contact. And like I said, we have a lot of attention on us, so we can get the ear often for issues with Dottie and some of the other city agencies. And so we've been really happy that that they've actually listened. We've changed some of the mobility from some of the plans that they had put in place for us. And so we're happy about that. And we've been doing a lot with good neighbor agreements because we do have new businesses that are coming in, primarily entertainment. And so we've had some good neighbor agreements We had the assistance through Jamie Torres. We requested Steve Charbonneau because we really wanted to provide some consistency among our good neighbor agreements so that the language would be kind of consistent, except for unique circumstances from one license application to another. Fortunately, we took and I also have the concerns about the redacted piece. Fortunately, we haven't had a problem with that because in 2018, after we kind of got burned at the altar, so to speak, of excise and license hearing by somebody that, you know, had gone right up to the altar and then said, oh no, we're not going to have it attached. We just went ahead and passed a resolution that we would actively oppose any licensing, whether it was marijuana or liquor, that did not enter into a good neighbor agreement. And so as I can't hear you.
I was just saying that's really an interesting.
Yeah, and so
approach.
word has gotten out, and so now they're contacting us ahead of time. And I think, you know, because there's nobody in our group, including me, that is very knowledgeable about any of this, it's really helped to have Steve Charbonneau, you know, kind of be at the table a little bit with us, just for people to kind of take us seriously. And I will say we've gotten some good community benefits in there. Of course, we just did one with Meow Wolf. They are a B corporation, and so community benefits is part of, you know, their ethos. But it's really modeling what we hope to have for tenants of the new stadium district development, if that ever happens and gets kind of straightened out. The other piece of it is that we actively blocked a 25,000 square foot music hall venue that wanted to come in to a part of the neighborhood that really we planned for as primarily family and residential oriented. We're looking at having more of the entertainment at the northern end, closer to the stadium, but this was, you know, a large building that was vacant, and I think somebody saw an opportunity, and you know, so we did do a needs and desires. We had good turnout to actively block and say we didn't have a need or desire. So we never got to the point where we had to look at a GNA, and they had not filed. So temporarily, at least, they backed off. They could, you know, but we've also talked with the leasing group that hopefully, and formed a nucleus of businesses to be more proactive in trying to attract business that's more compatible, you know, for that portion of the neighborhood. So that's all I have.
That's a lot. I would say you are busy.
We are
RNO.
busy.
And
the other thing is, I just do want to say is that we're part of the West Area Plan. So we're really working on that. The draft of it is probably going to be coming out within the next month or so, but we're really starting to develop a pretty strong group among West Colfax, Valverde, Villa Park, and Sun Valley. So 5 neighborhoods, is that 5 neighborhoods in Barnum? And so
yeah. So you're
if
giving
that is
me,
ever an assistance for a liaison, I'd be happy to talk about
well,
that.
I think we're going to have, that reminds me, we need to have the West Area Plan presented like we had other plans presented to ZAP. So I'm starring that as well. Boy, you guys are reminding me of a lot of things that we need to get working on.
Thanks.
But a couple of things just to interrupt everybody. The September 11th delegate meeting is going to be about good neighbor agreements. We're still working on the agenda, but people who've had, I'm hearing a lot here, people who are having problems with them, people who are having success, please come to that. And if you would like to present, Jean, you should talk directly to Loretta, because she's looking for a couple, or Troop D, they're looking for a couple people who have been successful to talk. So, And everybody
Well,
can
yeah,
speak.
we'll see. We've got them signed. We'll see how they play out, you know.
Well, that's
but-
another issue, enforcement.
But I will say that we've been really pleased with the content. We've also applied those in a little bit different way because we had the Solution Crisis Center come in with Mental Health Center for a stabilization and homeless shelter. And so we did successfully a couple of years ago use a GNA for that. And that has been going very well. So
that's another topic, and it's a huge one, but I want to keep going. So I'd like to switch to Chris Kiari, and he's not usually here, but he asked to speak about something that he's working on that ties in with excise and license. So Chris, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of information?
Thank you. And there are some familiar faces in the room, so it's nice to see those of you that I served on INC with a few years ago. My name is Chris Kiari, and the last 3 years since I've been with you there at the committee, I bought the Croak Patterson in Capitol Hill. Also made a film called Public Enemy #1 that won the Seattle Film Festival. That's the award sitting over my shoulder. But I'm here today because I did successfully have a rezoning at the Croak Patterson on Monday at City Council. We are now a GMX3, which is a mixed use commercial, which really solidifies the use of the property, which was governed by use overlays before, but now is memorialized through codified zoning for commercial. The property is a 9-room operating bed and breakfast, been open since 2012. I've owned and operated it for the last 3.5 years. The address is 420. I did share a presentation with Christine that she's welcome to share with all of you. And you'll see that this is, please don't be surprised about what I'm doing. It's been something I've been personally working on for a decade. What you might not know is I'm a melanoma survivor. At 27, they said, don't make long-term plans. And at 37, a doctor said, make long-term plans, because I had had enough things cut off by that point. 79 moles have been cut off. I'm still here. My 20th anniversary was July 2nd. On March 7th of 2011, weeks after the doctor said, be ambitious again, or encouraged me back to my natural inclination, I flew to Denver and looked at the Croak Patterson. It was an abandoned property. And at 10 o'clock at night on March 7, 2011, I pointed up to that house and I said, I want to turn you into a marijuana bed and breakfast. Forgive me. The world wasn't there. No one needs to remember where we were 10 years ago on that topic. And when we talk about consumption or hospitality and what that looks like, City Council and the mayor only passed that and signed that this April. So I really do love the topic of the conversation today, because as someone who's been engaged in RNOs before, I do value what each and every one of you do for your neighborhoods and in this forum for the city. So with that spirit in mind, I've come forward in the presentation Christine can share, will show that my desire is to start a process immediately to build community outreach and engagement, to engage in the dialogue and discussion for both support as well as concerns around what it would mean to operate and finally open a cannabis hospitality, in my case, adjacent to overnight accommodation. My business is Heads and Beds. I want to make it very clear, I have no desire to open up a club to the neighborhood. That is someone else's business model, not mine. Mine is, I believe, an opportunity to create something really unique, really exclusive, that starts the process of addressing a very discernible neighborhood concern and complaint about tourists who can purchase these products now, have no legal place to consume, so they do consume in the parks and on the street. I want to be one small gesture in what it looks like to address that. Give a tourist a legally licensed, definable space where I can say very clearly, yes, you can smoke that right over there. You may not know, but the property does currently have liquor, lodging, restaurant, and cabaret licenses for the Patterson Inn. Those will all be maintained and operated by Patterson Inn. I'll be coming in as a social equity applicant and through another corporate entity operating a venture called the 420 Denver. I have incorporated a Nevada company that intends to hopefully own and operate multiple locations in different states. But the Croak Patterson is my keystone, my inspiration, the first location, and a place that I want to do something very responsible and respectful to community and neighborhoods, so that we are acting with best practices as we leap forward into this new space. So I am very open to any concerns, questions, and I do welcome, I did put my email and my cell phone on the presentation, and would welcome any outreach to continue and start this conversation.
Well, thank you, Chris. I don't think, and I may be wrong, I can't share a PDF. There's no link. Is there a link to a website yet?
There isn't,
No.
but I'd welcome
Okay.
if you could share it by email with the
I can
committee.
email
so that-
almost everybody on here right away.
And then
but-
everyone would then have a copy.
But I do, okay, so I think I've got everybody covered. So before we move on, I think now would be a really good time to ask Chris questions, if you have any, because am I correct? This was just approved in the last year.
It was just approved. First applications to Denver are expected, my mother's birthday, coincidentally enough, November 12th. First applications. Everyone might remember that the Crenshaw Mansion, an individual named Cindy Sovine had attempted to do this some time ago. And the reason I'm coming to INC is I was friends with Cindy while she was working through that process. And I know that engagement is an important first step. Needs and desire is one level. Also, I want to enter good neighbor agreement because it's so unique, I think, to establish best practices. No one should wonder or attempt to do it after the fact. I want to be responsible and do it as the foundation for what I'm bringing forward. So needs and desires is one thing, but I think good neighbor agreement is the right step, so that, again, any concerns that are brought up can be addressed hopefully in that agreement.
Well, I think that's great that you're doing outreach. And is it in Uptown? What neighborhood is it?
My home is in Uptown Swallow Hill. The Patterson Inn is at 420 East 11th in Capitol Hill, which is on the corner of 11th and Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay. Are there any questions for Chris at this point? And I will send, as soon as I can multitask, I will send the PDF he forwarded. It looks like you just updated it. So
I
will
did.
send
I
that.
spelled massage wrong. Forgive me if you get the one with everyone's going to get a message therapist. Know that that's the grammar holds from my
Okay,
childhood. Fourth grade was a very rough year.
Okay, Eleni, did you have a question? Did somebody, I saw some hand flash.
See Miles?
Miles?
Yeah, that was me. Thanks
Okay.
for presenting, Chris. Quick question, and I know this wouldn't apply just to you. But with liquor establishments, they get cut off if they drink too much, and I think the establishment can be held liable. So in this new industry of marijuana, how is that handled if somebody does an edible or smokes too much and then gets in a vehicle? Do you have any idea how who would be held responsible?
I do believe, again, we're an emergent space, so I do already have a liquor license. So I'm familiar with the responsibility and liability, I assume, in that forum. One of the things in this space is it is just like alcohol, all employees will have to be certified in safe practices. And there are now some recognized organizations here in Colorado, certainly, that offer those safe practices, or at least how to give people advice on best use or not over consuming. One of the ways I hope to address it is predominantly what you'll see in the presentation is I'm looking to make a space where you have to be in the adjacent property to get the privilege or right then to gain access or buy access into this space. And then also limited to annual members. My goal is this is never high traffic or high volume. And so, but at the end of the day, it does come down to vendor responsibility to make sure that we are acting in a way that addresses that. And that is all included already in the state law and now in the city rules that have come out.
Okay, does anybody else have a question? Otherwise, we're going to go back to the larger discussion. I see Ian is with us. Welcome, Ian. Just to let you know, we've just gone all the way around and heard from a lot of people. I still have something that I want to share from Cindy Sestrich, but we've pretty much completed everybody who's on the call. Unless I'm missing somebody, please raise your hand if I've missed somebody completely. So, okay. All right. Peter, I don't know Peter. Pete, are you from a neighborhood? Can you just tell us where you're from? If you know.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so I assume you're talking about me.
Yeah. You
So
join-
yeah, I'm Pete Wintersheet. I'm with the Honey neighborhood, or the Highlands neighborhood, the Honey organization.
Okay.
I was just informed of this meeting and thought I might pop in, but no
okay.
official capacity or anything here.
Okay. And David Pardo is the official representative from your neighborhood,
Correct.
right? Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, thank you. So let's see. Thank you, Chris, for that. I will send it out as soon as we're done here, unless Ian can type in all the emails to everybody on the list while we're talking.
Thank you for the time. You all have a wonderful day.
Okay, I do want to just thank you. I want to just read something that Cindy Sestrich from Cap Hill has. First of all, we've been talking about this for a few months, but it's really too broad, too big. But I heard some of it from a couple of you, and I'm just going to read some of the testimony at the Homeless Out Loud hearing this week that she asked and said she would be reading it if she could come. And it's, why do the unhoused decline help? And I applaud many neighbors becoming active and engaged on the issue of our unsanctioned tent cities. Often we hear there's just no place for these people to go. We're sweeping them down the block. This, of course, is 100% demonstrably false. I encourage you to watch today's homelessness committee. The testimony from Denver Homeless Out Loud concedes there are spaces available every night, shelters and hotel rooms. The argument now is, one, it's insulting to only give those in illegal tent cities just two choices of safe, legal, free space. Two, free shelters and hotels, along with associated support services, do not, quote, respect the autonomy of the unhoused. Three, free shelters and hotels and support services do not always allow folks to keep their survival gear. Sometimes partners may be separated. And so we spend $248 million in a single fiscal year. We approve a sales tax to bring $48 million annually. In addition, we launch and expand the SOS sanctioned camps. We have space and support services ready. We have the means to get folks out of the 100-degree heat into spaces with showers, bathrooms, addiction, and support services. But until we can offer permanent housing with no strings, it's preferable to just let the camps remain. That's question mark. Folks, we are once again making the perfect enemy of the good. Any neighbor who has lived with unsanctioned tent city knows full well they serve no one, least of all the unhoused. And while shelters and hotel rooms are not a final answer, they are surely a preferable transition step to just leaving the tents alone. And what Cindy has, that's not her comment, that was somebody at the hearing, but what Cindy has been concerned about for some time is that we're sort of assuming that all the crime that's going on, the bicycle stealing in Cap Hill apparently is out of control, according to more notes she wrote to Ian and myself this morning. People climbing over to get bicycles. There's no enforcement by the police. You can't say, yes, that's my bicycle in the camp. There's people, what she's worried about, and I've heard this from other people, and I haven't heard quite the approach that Adrian is suggesting, that we just bite it off, and do the regulations ourselves and help them ourselves. But part of this is we're losing the goodwill of neighbors who for 10 years have been supportive and have been hoping the SOS sites would really move people into the next step. And people are just frustrated. So this is an issue around the city. Anyway, she wanted to bring it up. I've heard it also from a couple of people in Congress Park, where this is becoming increasingly problematic in the blocks north and south of Colfax. So I'm going to open it up. I want to be respectful that we know the city is trying to do something, but people are growing weary. So would somebody like to pick up with that and with what Adrian brought, which Ian, just because you missed it, he was saying they're going into do-it-yourself mode where the city isn't taking care of the homeless issue, the sidewalks or inspections. And I would throw in or enforcement. The city isn't taking care of enforcement. They're going to start trying to do it themselves. Somebody else want to jump in?
Just real quick, to be clear, our concern goes a little deeper than that. The city, in our view, is fundamentally preventing any action. And that's why we feel obliged to take action. And we fully expect we're going to wind up in jail for it. Now, this is reached, in my judgment, or in our judgment collectively, something like the Tiananmen Square situation, where someone's got to stand up and say, God damn it, you know, we need to do something. It's our values, and we are not going to be prevented from doing something by the city saying either, number one, don't do it, or number two, we're going to do it and you've got to wait your turn. All of that stuff is, to coin well, I won't coin the rude phrase, is hogwash.
Okay, so I would just throw in that it's not only, I mean, this is protecting the homeless, but it's also protecting neighbors.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to make sure that that's clear. The breaking point is there. I agree with you, and we're going to get more and more backlash if this isn't addressed.
And we're going to get more and more. We just did a neighborhood cleanup around our school last weekend, and our main motivation was to pick up all of the needles and the other stuff that the school kids might pick up themselves. And we were not prepared to run that risk. So 30 of us got out and had a great time. One of the local businesses supplied yummy donuts afterwards, and we met each other, and we recognized a common need, a common interest, and a common enthusiasm to do something about it. And it was great, as a social, I've said for many years that neighborhoods work best when they're confronting a crisis. We are confronting a crisis now, at least in our neighborhood, and as far as I can see, most others. And if not, your turn will come, trust me, because the city's moving people out of Baker and they're going to wind up in Country Club next. And so, don't be coming crying to us about what a disaster it is that Baker is shirking its responsibility and not taking its share of the homeless. That also is hogwash. We are, and we're going to continue to do it. But the reality is that it's doing something for our neighborhood. We talk a lot about how we can't get involvement. This is a great way to do it.
Okay, but no one's attacking Baker. So just.
Oh, I get that.
Okay.
We're not attacking anybody else
Let's
either.
see if we can have a little more discussion around this. Somebody has their hand up, but I'm not sure who it is. I thought I saw a hand.
This is Bill Tanner, just for a second. And
okay.
One of the thoughts I've had about homelessness, and I spent time talking to homeless people. I knew homeless people personally many, many years ago when I was younger, is that we tend to think of homeless, it's easy to divide homeless people as if they were a single group with single causes for being homeless. That's a problem. On the right side of the conversation, people define homeless people as all, just like our mayor of Aurora, as if they were all drug dealers and criminals, okay, or wherewithals. Okay, well that is a small group of the homeless people. That is a portion of people who are homeless. There are people who are homeless who have mental issues. Okay, and you're not going to solve their problems by more tent cities or whatever, they really need active treatment. And I guess during the Reagan era, we shut down mental hospitals and mental institutions that existed to serve people with those kind of problems. And then there's another group. There are people who just lost their jobs, okay, or just are working in a job, but literally cannot afford to live in Denver. Okay, one of the most heartbreaking discussions at Inc. A few years ago was a young woman who was talking about how she was a waitress and could not afford to live in Denver. And, her biggest problem was to avoid getting raped every night, okay, by other homeless people. That's a different situation. And if we continue to talk about homeless people as a single group, we can't solve the problem. There's a solution for people with mental issues. There's a solution for people with who are drug addicted. There's a solution for people who just, have a job but can't afford a place to live. And those solutions may be different. So I hate to talk about the homeless as if they're a single group or there's a single way of solving the problem. And in my talking to homeless people, there are just a whole variety of different reasons. I talked to people over by the Cherry Creek Mall. Now the police there have become more efficient about making sure homeless people aren't there. But while I was there, I talked to one guy who was very bright, very highly intelligent person. I made a point to him that, hey, he could get a job anytime he wanted. He's got an intelligence that's equal to anyone else's, but he just doesn't want to work. He enjoyed the outdoor life. I can respect that to some extent, although he did steal a lot of stuff to make his way, and that I don't respect and can't support. But for him, it was a choice. For another person, and I'll stop in a second, was a young guy who had been a manager of a restaurant for a period of time and now had a meth problem. And I talked to him for quite a while, and he said he realized he had a problem, but he really wasn't ready to do anything about it at that point in time. Meth was his path that he was taking, and he didn't want to help him, and really wasn't seeking it. The third person was a Navy veteran. Okay, he'd been out in the street for a while, and his problem was alcohol. And he really needed some help with his alcoholism, and he was looking for help. He wanted to get off the streets and have a more productive life. But those are three different people with three very different individual sets of needs. And any single situation isn't going to solve the problem for them.
So
end of speech.
Thank you, Bill. I think we all probably agree with you on that. But the question I keep coming back to, I'd love to hear if somebody has some insight, because we've thought about tackling this, and it's really difficult for Inc. to tackle it when there's probably 20 city and volunteer organizations set up with think tanking on this homelessness issue. And the whole bureaucracy of Denver is fragmented on this, working in several different silos. I just don't know where Inc. can go with it, because there's so many people with so much more information, so much more knowledge, so much more experience.
Well, I think what Inc. could do is you can't tackle the problem directly. It's too big a problem to be dealt with by an organization necessarily. But to say, look, for people with mental health issues, what is the city doing to get them into treatment facilities where they can be helped? For people who are addicted, I think you have to split them into two parts. people who want help with their addiction and people who don't want help with their addiction. The people who want help with their addiction and have reached the point where they realize, hey, this is a dead end. This doesn't lead anywhere. How do we find them, and how do we make sure that they get to a treatment facility that can be helped? For people who are just out of work and can't afford housing, how do we get subsidized housing in place so that they can have a place to live? And what do we do in the city about getting to a point where they can have a sustainable wage? So you have to look at the different causes of the problem, and I'm not saying those are solutions I just dreamed up, but insist that the city look for solutions to the differential problem and repeatedly ask, what are you doing to solve or resolve these problems? Obviously, just shuffling people around is not solving the problem, other than in the short term. I don't know. I'm interested in the thoughts of others. I'm certainly no expert in the field.
Madam Chair, if I may, approximately 5 years ago, INC impaneled through ZAP a high-level committee, which I had the privilege to chair, looking at this issue in detail. Bill's absolutely right. This is not a homogeneous population. The first thing that we did was to look at all of the unhoused in Denver, specifically locally, that is in the city, but also in the metro area. And there is excellent data collected every year on who these unfortunate folks are, or in some case, fortunate folks. We put all that information together. We worked up a solution because we were a solution-oriented, not a complaint-oriented group. And we submitted that my insistence was that the entire report had to be produced in 6 weeks and had to be less than 10 pages. One of the problems that we've got is that there are, as Bill says, 20 different organizations working diligently on this for years and years and years and coming out with august and well-informed white papers, multi-pages. We didn't do that. We didn't do any of that. We put that together. I made a presentation to the membership, and with one neighborhood exception, the recommendations of the group, which were basically to essentially force the city to implement housing in all neighborhoods equally and to fund it. And we worked out how much it was going to cost. And that was passed by INC's delegates. And there were a hell of a lot more of them then than there are now. And we did absolutely nothing after that. So, in answer to the question, what can and will INC do? I think that is, at least in this topic, a pretty clear answer. And I would have to say that having put in the work and done the scientific and the reasonable evaluation and established that, for example, 1/3 of the people who are unhoused are families. And, you never hear about that. Anyway, bottom line, we've done this. I'll be happy to circulate that PowerPoint presentation, which even the busiest of us have got time to read. And to anyone who wants it, I could maybe send it to you again, Christine. It's somewhere on our website, I'm sure.
I think
God
it's still
knows
there.
where.
I do remember but I think the issue that's risen to the top that I'm hearing in all of this, families and immigrants coming in and need help, and they're getting moved in most situations into temporary and then hopefully permanent. Some of that's happening. Some of the social impact housing has happened. I'd love to hear that you were pushing has happened. I don't know how successful, but there's this, we can't force someone to get help. It's illegal. It's against the Constitution of the United States to force someone, even if they're mentally ill, to get help unless they are committing a crime and they're sent through the court system. So there's one element that seems to be more persistent and more prevalent, and you may not agree with me, But the
I
families.
absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm all for
Yeah.
individual liberty. Come on.
No, what I mean is that problem seems intractable. That one segment is becoming an intractable issue for everybody, for all neighborhoods. I mean, we have, even out on Lowry, families sleeping in cars, and we have it too, but, and I agree, a lot of families are moving through, but I don't think I think that's easier to address than this other issue, and people may not agree, but, and I will get out your white paper and send it around again. I would be curious, Adrian, and then we need to move on to the scheduling issue for our ZAP meetings, but I am curious, when you said inspections that used to happen, are you referring to just the fact that the 311 is overloaded and isn't coming out when you file something? And how do you deal with that on your own?
No, what I was referring to was Baker was, and I assume other neighborhoods, though I don't know that. Baker was, used to have regular inspections. We had a neighborhood inspection officer. We all knew who he, for the most part, was. And he made the mistake of standing up in a meeting which Mayor Hickenlooper at the time was at, and made some rude comment about people who serve in restaurants, and Hickenlooper basically landed all over him, and we haven't seen him since, or anybody else.
But there's been
so
pushback to that. There's been a lot of pushback that, and Ian could speak to this if he wanted, that neighborhood inspections are used against the people who can least comply or will be the most harmed. So I think we've sort of gone the other way on that. And anyway,
to our detriment, I would say, but just looking at the results. But I mean, any city activity can be used to disadvantage any group if people want to do it that way. Mm-hmm. One of the things I think INC can probably do is help to mitigate that. But the mitigation, which is not to do it anymore, it has certainly negatively impacted our neighborhood, all of our neighborhood, the poor people and the rich people.
Yeah.
Not that we have that many rich people outside of myself.
Okay, so I am wondering if maybe we can do a poll on my other questions, but I just want to see if we can switch gears, since nobody else is raising their hand on this, to Mary Jane's issue, and see if there's anybody who has an idea for an approach, or anybody who would like to head up some excise and licensing work within zoning and planning or within Inc. Does anybody have a suggestion for Mary Jane or Ian and myself or Inc. As how to go about dealing with excise and licenses when they don't seem to be responsive and don't want to change that redaction, and I think aren't really are kind of hoping good neighbor agreements don't get done. Does anybody have any suggestions for Mary Jane? I'm feeling a little bit impotent on this one because I can't get through and don't really know how to force excise and licenses unless somebody wants to dig into the regulations and find something that excise and license is violating by doing this.
Just a suggestion, how about inviting them, I know it isn't going to happen quick, but to come to the next ZAP meeting, and we can get to the bottom of this, and they can get to the bottom of how the whole of the neighborhoods feel. However that is. That's
a great idea, and I did try to reach Erica Rogers, whose phone number's changed now. I see that in the chat. We are trying to get E&L to do an introduction to the September 11th meeting, the delegate meeting, not on GNAs per se, but just to go through the regulatory process, do their brief outline of, licensing, how it works, et cetera. But I agree, I think that's a good idea, have them come specifically on this issue.
So, hi. It's
Jean?
Jean. I
Yes.
was just wondering, because I was having a lot of issues with excise and licensing, particularly the hearing officers that I felt were very, you know, they were all over the map in terms of how oriented toward community, and have had many different. And so we did have a conversation with Erica, but you know, our city council person was very, and I worked through Nest when Irene was there, and she set up conversations with them. And in fact, that's how we learned that we could actually ask for a public hearing for a renewal license, and we've been granted one. So I'm just, you know, we got a lot of help through Jamie, and just to set up those conversations, and then through Nest, just to have, you know, our voice heard.
Did you say your council person helped?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I know we need to keep moving. I will try to see if Erica can come to the next meeting after we have which we also have the homelessness committee report.
Christine, you know, that was my idea too. Like one of our council people or some of the council people might be able to help, but we're really not that familiar. You know, we're relatively new to Colorado, and we thought somebody else might have a better contact, you know, closer contact with the council people to ask if they could intervene.
Who's your council person?
Chris Hines. But I mean,
Okay.
any of the council people would be able to intervene, you know, if anybody has a relationship or, you know, anybody.
Yes. Yeah, I'm kind of stumped because I'm used to E&L at least responding. And it's a little frustrating to not be able to talk with them directly on the phone about it. So, okay. Can I just ask, because am I frozen or? Huh.
Limited, we're back, limited involvement with respect to activism. And as you might gather, I'm kind of an activist, so, you know, that doesn't work for me, but apparently it doesn't work for a lot of other organizations because our membership is dropping rapidly, as the attendance at this meeting alone would imply. So, you know, I think that, you know, people are voting with their feet on that issue and looking for other organizations and other ways to get the attention of the city. And as we just discussed, that is extraordinarily difficult. And, you know, when we go to our city council member, they say, hey, we are the legislative branch. The administration has nothing to do with us, basically. We can go in and we can beg them to do something or pay attention, but that's all we can do, all the power we have. And so in a strong mayor system, a strong administration system, getting access and getting things done by the city is now, or has become, very difficult indeed.
Okay, Christine, I don't know if you heard what I said. I'll just briefly repeat that, you know, my reaching out to the licensing didn't seem to work. And my only thought was that Inc. itself reaching out as an organization, or someone from Inc. with a little bit more power and clout than myself reaching out, or someone reaching out to a councilman that they have a connection with. You know, we've never really had a problem or connected with the council person, so they don't really know us.
To Adrian's point about INC, I think that's been by design by the city administration, having been a city employee and overheard conversations about, we got to get INC under control. We have got to divide and conquer. This is,
Yes.
I mean, I've heard it
Interesting.
for a decade,
Wow.
in high level meetings. So it is, and to
Mhm.
create dissension, to divide
Yes.
up constituents, to make neighbors argue. So everything
Mhm.
Adrian's saying about working together, there's been a concerted effort for over a decade to not do that.
Interesting.
To, and it was widely discussed at public information meetings by PIOs, by deputy managers, by mayoral appointees, at senior staff meetings. So it's no secret. It is no secret by any stretch of the imagination. So when you have the East Central plan, the East Area plan come on, it's just more ways to divide and conquer. So people are not really voting by their feet. I think it's been an effort to just, you know, continue to undermine the efforts subtly, gradually, by putting in policies and procedures where you're not engaging the community. And if you do engage the community, it's at the last minute, it's in a divisive way,
Mhm.
it's not inclusive, and people start arguing, and then it just kind of happens. So, and that's something that's unfortunate. And it's something that we've constantly said to the city, you need to do better. You need to engage these communities. And, you know, we can't even get to someone's point earlier about surveys. Wouldn't it be great if they really surveyed people? They do survey people, but what we find out is they survey a select group. Not everybody gets the survey within an area. It's just people that are on an email list. And I even find out that they're cutting out RNOs that are in the area. They're not getting notice. So it's, you know, whether it's that part is deliberate or an oversight, but it keeps happening over and over again. We have a broken system at the city level, and there's no desire to fix it. So I think INC needs to be more activist because we're facing these assaults from different places, whether it's incompetence, we don't care, whatever the city's reasoning is, but make no mistake about it, it was by design.
Mhm.
So
Working.
I think we can reach out on many things, but I do think we have to be very careful on the activism, unless it's just because people have just don't always agree. And we have to recognize we're made up of what now we're way down, maybe 40 organizations, all of which have their own bylaws, their own way of operating. And we're supposed to represent those member organizations. So while I agree on many, many issues and want to be activist, I find myself going to other places to be activist. And I think many of us in this meeting today go to other places like, you know, our church or a group, you know, well, I can think of a couple, but we go to other places to be active because of that constraint that INC has to represent 40 disparate neighborhood organizations. So I think it's going to be a problem to do it.
Or an opportunity.
Or an opportunity. I think asking the questions the way we did with group living last year, you know, we studied it, we asked a ton of questions. We wrote this extensive compilation of questions. We prodded, we asked for results, we asked for data. I think we need to maybe do that on the homeless issue. Again, I would like to, for example, know what were the results of the social impact housing? You know, there's how many of them have been built? 2, Tennyson maybe, and I don't know how many,
Sure.
1 on Broadway. Yeah, so it's that was 5 years ago they started. And I know there was a lot of money put into that, but we don't really see what happened with that idea.
I would recommend a Cora because they don't, when we've asked for results, we don't get them. I mean, we've been asked, or we get a cherry picked, like it's not the full data set. And so unfortunately, there was a time when they would just give you the data if they had it, you know, but you really got to probably do Cora requests if you want to get maybe more comprehensive and not cherry picked and not just talking points, but actual data. Because when they have referenced data and studies and we've asked for that data set, we can't get it without a Cora.
That's really, yeah, unfortunately, and cores take a while to formulate.
And they cost money. Yeah, exactly. So again, not designed to be transparent. It's designed to slow you down and that. But you know, certainly try to get it. Maybe by copying your council person, maybe you might be slightly likely more to get it. But I would then, if that doesn't go anywhere and you don't feel that you're getting the full data set, I would do a Cora request. I mean, that seems to be that they have to at least respond to that.
Well, I'm trying to do some right now on the National Western issue, because I know that out of the 9,000 people that chatted and gave input, it's a lie to say that most of them, the way they did at the council hearing, most of them want the arena. I mean, so I need to get the backup data, and it's not easy to find. So I agree.
Bless you.
Okay, so wait, there's a question about the group living from Bruce Basket. Is INC going to return to this? I don't know, Bruce. The executive committee will be deciding which ballot issues will even be covered at a meeting in October. And I don't know how many issues will be able to be recovered. ZAP, I don't think we're going to return to it. First of all, it's exhausting. Secondly, there was compromise. And third, we don't have the broadband, what's the word? Bandwidth. I'm sorry, the bandwidth to tackle that again. So that would be my short answer. If you want to submit something to the executive committee, asking them, but the problem with there's so many ballot issues, and when you have one discussed at INC, you have to have pros and cons on every single one. So it'll be a really long meeting. And I don't know what the executive committee and the board are doing on that. So. Okay, so back to the.
Hey, Christine, this is Ian. I just want to jump in there. I've been in for a while. I wasn't able to unmute myself. I apologize, everyone, for being late. Car accident. I do want to note that INC typically participates in Denver Decides and the planning of Denver Decides, where they do the debates for Denver Channel 8. So I do believe that we will be formally engaged in debates regarding all ballot initiatives, even if they don't come to a regular INC meeting.
So something on Channel 8 will cover all of the ballot issues.
Yep. And we've been involved with that for years.
Okay. So Ian, back to our other issues about whether we should be meeting on a Thursday night or a Tuesday night instead of a Saturday morning. I don't think that's the problem with turnout myself, but it's been suggested to us, and it would be nice for maybe getting some younger parents who have soccer games to go to. But I'm wondering, given the poor turnout today, if you and I could do a survey monkey to the list on this question and on the question of meeting every other month. Do people want to just give us some thoughts right now on it before we wind up? We have about 15 minutes left.
Christine, if I could just jump in here again.
Mm-hmm.
We may have had a low turnout today, but there are other issues that have turned out 60 people. I think a lot of it has to do with us not effectively using our tools and honestly getting our agendas out late, which I think we can both own. It just happened more than we'd like to admit. And I am open to going bi-monthly, but sometimes it's like we could have 5 months in a row where there's 5 straight hot topics, and there literally just hasn't been any large moving pieces. The planning process is there. So I don't know how we balance that for committee members, because we recognize that we love spending time with you. We miss doing it in person, and the coffee and the bananas. Sorry, driving by on Broadway. Hold on. I'm at the Underground Music Showcase for my job this weekend too. Anyways, we really appreciate it. We love seeing everybody. I'm open to doing it less. I'm open to keeping it going. We've tried over the years. I think also the conversation about needing more help with exercise and licensing and stuff, and people haven't stepped up. So we really just want to make sure that we're serving you. And I do think a Survey Monkey can be really good for soliciting that, but it's also going to probably require us making phone calls to make sure people take it.
Okay. All right, well, we'll sit on that. We'll maybe ask people about switching the days and just leave the meeting monthly. I agree with you. We could have 5 months in a row. And I heard, Ian, you weren't in on the whole meeting, but there were several good reminders about things that we need to have come before us, including the West Side Plan, including Cashman's work on the RNOs. So I have a list that we're going to have to take a look at. And I think we can get some agendas for this for the fall. But if there's anything else that people can think of that's a really good agenda, and we're going to work on the Eleni brought something else up about gentrification and housing that we're going to try to get some experts in on as well, Ian. So we have probably agendas for the next 4 meetings. So. All right, well, I'm really glad to see people. I don't see anybody else with their hand up. So let's just end the meeting then. And thank you all for coming and for trying and for doing the work in your neighborhood. Oh, David, I know we didn't get to your question, but I think it's a little complex here. Is there anybody who has zoning advice for the Chaffee Park area where the residential area is being acquired in order to aid the detention on the commercial area? It's really a complicated issue.
No worries. Thank you for asking.
Okay. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. And again, thanks for all you're doing.